Welcome to Summoner's Rift.
Another game of snake and mice.
30 seconds until minions spawn.
Sometimes failure just creeps right up on you, doesn't it? No legs, but I still have a little spring in my step.
Minions have spawned.
Spineless? No. Flexible? Extremely.
Where are you off to? Use this gift well.
First,
Sweet embrace.
Trust what you see. Patience, darling. Chains, lantern.
Forest protect us all.
I know what everyone wants.
an ally has been slain.
You won't be a thing.
Sometimes I need to treat myself.
I'm gone. Secrets are sharper than blades. Think what I could offer.
Bring up.
Let me in. I want to be the last impression.
Bring up. I got two thumbs and a
Wealth
shield.
is valuable only as a means to power.
Blue. Rout. Sometimes I need to treat myself. Face the wind.
I can predict your every move.
I got two thumbs and a shield.
You have
Three
slain
down.
an enemy.
One touch is all it takes.
It doesn't bite. If you've come to kill me,
Come, look me in the eyes.
Taunt me again. I do love hearing you
There is
mask
only
your
death.
insecurities.
mine or yours. Rout! Be protected.
It seems I must handle things personally.
Blue! Nature's surprise! A gift from the forest.
Keep your enemies close, and me closer.
Kill
Killing people is a bad habit,
Use this gift well.
but I can't
Careful
seem to
now. I'm right.
Bring up. Forest protects us all.
Power requires precision.
Be protected.
There is only death. Mine or yours.
Poison takes so many forms.
Nature's surprise.
You've come to kill me.
Destroy them from the inside out.
Bring
I
us.
hope you brought friends.
My attentions are needed elsewhere. Watch your step.
Killing people is a bad habit, but I can't seem to quit.
An ally An enemy has been slain.
Just a taste. Do not tempt a viper. Such unrefined creatures.
An enemy has been slain.
Am I getting under your skin?
A gift from the
Take pride in how swiftly running only accelerates the running.
An enemy has been slain. Killing spree.
Do you have a longing? Or would you like one? I may leave, but I'm never gone. I'll take care of everything.
You have slain an enemy.
Watch and wait.
blue. Bring us. Sometimes I need to treat myself.
Don't be cold.
Gotcha. Meet my friend Dave. Bring up! Renown!
An ally has been slain. Enemy double kill. You have slain an enemy.
Every problem is an opportunity.
Rampage.
Like what you see?
Shut down.
Many wars begin with a whisper.
Executed.
Do not turn your back on me. To the left. Die with grace.
It's actually a clever invention. We should call it the really smart little dish elevator. I don't know if Miss Howells will go along with that. Then we'll give her a new name too. Really mean house troll. That's what we'll call her from now on. You know, I've never actually seen one of these in real life. That's okay. Wonder what it looks like on the inside. Alice, we shouldn't. Why? Because a really mean house troll told us not to, and because it's really old, and it probably hasn't been used in forever. That's what makes it so cool. There could be like a treasure map inside, or the rotting heads of the last students who disobeyed Miss Howells. You mean really mean house trolls? Now let's see what we have. Oh, it's empty. On the plus side, no human heads. Let's go back upstairs. Alice, this is our floor. So why are you still going up? We never got to see anything above this floor. Don't you want to know what's upstairs? Really mean house troll is upstairs. We could wake her up. Afraid she'll eat your bones? Actually, I'm more worried she'll kick me out of the house. Then stay here, but I'm going to check it out. Does she want to get caught?
An enemy has been slain.
Can't hurt to look. I knew you'd come! I thought this building was 4 stories. Me too. Aren't we already on the 4th floor? Yeah. Then, what's on the 5th floor of a 4-story building? Only one way to find out. A door. I wonder what's on the other side. Oh, well, now at least we know what's on the 5th floor of a 4-story building. The roof. It's beautiful up here. Hand me that brick. I'll prop the door open. Good idea. Don't want to get locked out up here. Oh, look at that view. Amazing. Hey, Alice? Yeah? Thanks. For what? For making this happen. It's no biggie. Seriously, I would have never come up here without you. I'm glad we did. Thanks.
That's where the video stops. My phone only lets me record for so long before it automatically cuts off. I found the video waiting for me when I got back to my room. Even though it only shows an up-close and personal view of my pocket, I can still see the moment in my memory. Growing up in Queens, the view of Manhattan was always like a mirage, something in the distance, both real and unreal. But on the rooftop with Alice, New York was stretched out all around us, like we could graze our fingertips over the peaks and valleys of the buildings, grasp the city in our arms, and hug it close to our chests.
Has destroyed a turret.
Now,
I'll be back soon.
I'm back in my room.
Miss me.
It's way past lights out, and I still can't quite decide. Is this all a dream? Or did I just wake up?
Are sharper than
The Leopold Foundation has set up a stipend for me. A few weeks after accepting the scholarship, I received a debit card and account summary in the mail. When they arrived, I remember staring at the number listed in bold font beside the words total balance.
think what I could
$4,000.
offer.
I felt dizzy just looking at it. I felt the same way on the morning of my first full day living in Manhattan, standing in front of an ATM. Alice was beside me at the bank kiosk. Neither of us had withdrawn from our accounts yet. I slid my debit card into the machine, entered the PIN I'd memorized beforehand, and tapped the screen. Check account balance. During the half-second wait for the next screen to load, I was sure something would go wrong. The account would be empty, the money gone, the scholarship canceled. Your new life has been revoked. We apologize for the inconvenience. I pressed my eyes closed. And when I opened them again, a number was glowing in the center of the screen. $4,000. It seemed like a kind of magic. All of a sudden, I was a thousandaire.
Keep your enemies
Alice and I spent the next 4 days exploring the city. We took safaris through Central Park and observed the wildlife in their natural habitats. Pigeons, squirrels, tourists. We wandered the West Village, getting lost in the tangle of cobblestone streets. The sidewalks crowded with restless natives waiting for their turn to brunch. We charted the constellations of Grand Central and navigated the glowing monuments of Times Square. We listened to music in Washington Square Park and practiced our impressions of Miss Howells. And in our more honest moments, we talked about how nervous we both are about all of this. New house, new school, new life. We went in search of one-of-a-kind food trucks and exotic ice cream flavors, like caramel soft serve topped with extra virgin olive oil and sea salt. We walked until our legs were sore, then kept walking to the edges of the island and beyond. We felt unprecedented. We'd never had spare money in our pockets, never roamed Manhattan parentless, never known olive oil and sea salt could go on ice cream. We'd never felt so free. Part of me wishes it would never end, that Alice and I could just keep on exploring the city like that, day after day. But nothing lasts forever, I guess. Tomorrow's my first day at Auden, which means I should probably wrap this up and get ready for bed.
Violence is so
Big day tomorrow.
Nature is always
Okay, so I just got back from Auden and wow, I mean, where to even begin? With the moment I nearly puked up my breakfast all over East 66th Street? Or when I tried to go to class in the janitor's closet? Oh, maybe I should kick things off with an anthropological study of my classmates, starting with the nobility. So glamorous, so cool, almost unreal in their corner of the secret garden. But I'll get to all that. It's best if we begin at the beginning. The moment Alice and I stepped out of the front door of the Leopold residence this morning. We were dressed in our brand new matching Auden uniforms, white blouse and blue checked skirts. They'd arrived yesterday in a box, neatly labeled with each of our names, along with matching laptops and tablets. Thank you, Leopold Foundation. The residence was 3 blocks from Auden, but the walk seemed to stretch on for miles. With each step, my stomach twisted a little tighter. Auden didn't just feel like a new school. It felt like a whole new planet. I was hit by a rush of homesickness. Everything around me pulsed with unfamiliarity. I turned a glance toward Alice. In no time at all, she'd become something like my best friend. But that wasn't the truth. I didn't actually know Alice at all. It's not like we didn't talk. We talked all the time. But when things got personal, Alice always found a way to steer the conversation somewhere else, which left me wondering, what kind of music did she listen to? Did she have a boyfriend back home? Or a girlfriend? Siblings? Pets? Did she play any sports? Any musical instruments? What was her favorite movie? Her favorite food? Her favorite anything? Wasn't this the type of stuff you were supposed to know about your best friend? Our lives had been thrown together so suddenly, so unexpectedly. In the crazy turbulence, we'd hung onto each other while everything else in the world rocked loose and zigzagged through the air around us. But when you got right down to it, we were still strangers. And right now, I needed something more than a stranger. I needed my parents, my annoying sisters, someone who actually knew me. All of a sudden, I felt sick, like I was about to throw up. A full-scale avalanche of first-day jitters was about to come roaring over me when, out of nowhere, Alice spoke up. She was like, "We're here." I looked up, and there it was. My new school. Ready or not, here we go. Off to planet Auden. The school building is actually 3 buildings. Beautiful 6-story brick buildings on a tree-lined street. The sidewalk in front was mobbed with students in uniforms. They came in all shapes and sizes. Younger kids wearing backpacks that were nearly as big as they were. Parents hovering over them, fussing with their hair, straightening their collars. A few feet away, a group of teenagers were gathered in a tight cluster, comparing their summers. They looked old enough to be in college. It seemed impossible that all these students should be going to the same place. And impossible that I was going there too. We went inside. But as the new kids, we didn't really know our way around. And before long, it was obvious. We were completely lost. The school was a labyrinth of stairs and passageways weaving between the buildings. We might still be wandering around if we hadn't run into a guy who looked about our age. He had a round face and round glasses. He was wearing a blazer and tie, but then so were all the other middle school guys. He introduced himself as Nathaniel, then immediately corrected himself by telling us everyone calls him Nathan. And good news, Nathan was going to the same place we were. On our way there, he gave us a little of his backstory. Turns out, Nathan is new too. Not as new as us, but still, new by Auden standards. He started at the school a year ago. Grew up in Manhattan, not far from Auden actually, but unlike most of the kids, he didn't grow up ultra-rich. Until last year, he'd gone to public school and lived in a cheap rent-controlled apartment down the street. As a kid, he'd sometimes see the Auden students going by, looking all fancy in their uniforms, walking down the sidewalk like they owned it. He'd sometimes stand in front of Auden, just staring at it, like the school was a magic portal. I remember he used those exact words. Magic portal. Alice asked the obvious question. So then, how'd Nathan get through the magic portal? His answer? He developed an app called Weather Eyes. As soon as Nathan gave us this little nugget of information, Alice grabbed his arm and was like, "Seriously? You made Weather Eyes?" It took Nathan a second to respond. All his attention was on Alice's hand, on his arm. His cheeks had suddenly turned a new shade of red. He mumbled, "You've heard of it?" And Alice was like, "I have it on my phone. I use it all the time." Nathan seemed to grow a few inches taller. He was like, "Yeah, well, so do 4 million other users across the world." Mr. Confidence all of a sudden. Apparently, I was the only one who hadn't heard of it. Before Nathan could explain, Alice jumped in and was like, "Know how most weather apps just tell you the temperature and like if it's going to rain or whatever? Weather Eyes goes beyond that. It tells you what to wear for the day. If you should put on a light jacket, if you'll need a scarf because it's going to get chilly later." I could tell Nathan was enjoying this. This girl, whose hand was just on his arm, talking about how awesome Weather Eyes is. His app that he started. He went on to explain that Weather Eyes offers, quote unquote, customizable weather-based accessory and lifestyle suggestions. The guy sounded like a press release. He was all, "It helps you pick the perfect outfit for the conditions outside, tells you what to pack, offers tips about how to spend your afternoon, in the park or at the movies, that kind of thing." I still didn't get it. How does an app get a person into Auden? Nathan explained. 2 years ago, he sold Weather Eyes. Some giant tech company paid him a humongous amount of money. And just like that, Nathan was able to pay the ridiculously expensive tuition at the Auden school. Alice was like, "So you bought your way through the magic portal?" Nathan stopped. His eyes flickered toward Alice. He stared at her, just the hint of a smile on his face. I don't need Emily Poe's new and revised dictionary to describe the look on his face. That word already exists in the English language. I believe it's pronounced smitten. And I know the word for the look on Alice's face, too. Oblivious. If she noticed that Nathan was smitten, she was doing an amazing job of hiding it. Fast forward 9 hours. Quick update. I downloaded Weather Eyes. Check it out. Kind of amazing, right? The guy who led us through the maze of Auden's stairways and hallways was the same guy who made this. This thing that 4 million people are carrying around in their pockets all the time. That's on my phone now, too. Telling me I shouldn't forget to put on sunscreen tomorrow. Okay, back to day 1. Alice and I had the same morning schedule. We moved from one class to the next in a fog of awkwardness, pretending not to notice the curious glances that shot our way in the halls. The eyes of our new classmates following us as we crossed each classroom. Students whispered. They nudged each other. We were an oddity. Everyone knew everyone else, and none of them knew us. We appeared to be the only scholarship students in our class. Were there others? Were they better at hiding it than us? Auden had a language all its own. This perplexing new vocabulary seemed to exist for the sole purpose of making newcomers look like idiots. Class periods were blocks. School uniforms were alternately known as blues for boys or whites for girls. Calling roll was taking the register. using the wrong term would result in classmates staring at you like you'd spontaneously switched to Esperanto. When I mentioned to a girl in fourth block, that I was in the 7th grade, she interrupted me with a cold glare. She was like, "Form." And I was like, "Huh?" She sighed like I was the biggest noob on the planet and then explained, "At Auden, we don't say grade, we say form. You are in Form 7. I felt like a cockroach that had just been swatted off her leg. I wanted to scurry back to Queens and hide forever. And yet, in between the sharp jabs of alienation and embarrassment, there were also 1,000 bright flashes of wonder, like when I stopped and took in my new surroundings with disbelief. The school was a dork's paradise. Just look at the library. You could get lost in the tall shelves of books. A spiral staircase led to a second-floor rare manuscript gallery. Down the hall is the Cooper Technology Center. Gleaming rows of computers, a separate tech lab, 3D printers, a robotics workshop, a bulletin board advertising more extracurriculars and clubs than you could ever hope to join. Debate, chess, yoga, book club, girls in programming, fencing, equestrian. And then there's the cafeteria. Oh, the cafeteria. Lunch is provided daily by a catering company that offers, quote unquote, sustainable and locally sourced farm-to-school meals. There are vegan and gluten-free options, a fresh salad and sandwich bar, multiple entree and appetizer choices. I've got to admit, it was all a little intimidating. Know what they were serving for soup of the day? White bean and escarole. I don't even know what escarole is. I was like 50% sure it was snails. When I mentioned this to Alice, she shook her head and was like, "You're thinking of escargot." Just to be safe, I avoided the soup anyway.
But it's just not
It was all way fancy.
good enough. It's just not good enough. And if Dustin messages me or calls me and tells me that he was listening to that book and he liked it, I am blaming you.
I don't like it.
It's also Henry Linger. That's how Henry Linger man. Fine. Realmbreaker's the one that's supposed to be a good book. I want to listen to like top 10 facts and shit like that, but I don't want anything like creepy or scary, you know? Why what? Okay, that's all I listen to is like top 10 scariest places you should never go. Top 10 things people died to die. Top 10 times the internet solved a crime. Top 5 angels that are worse than demons. Forgive me, Father. 5 to the recordings you should never listen to. This world is judgment. Top 10 paranormal experiments the government kept a secret. Ten secrets that taught us you should know. Wait. Into the thick of it.
We knew we needed life insurance for our kids.
"15 birds you should fear the most." How about 15 birds you should eat? Huh? Give me that. Six apartment horror stories animated.
Before my husband and I got married, We were living together in a mediocre apartment complex in a similarly mediocre part of the city. Now, it wasn't an especially dangerous place, but security at the complex was severely lacking. For context, I once had my car stolen right out of the parking lot in broad daylight without anyone noticing. Another issue with the complex's parking lot was its shortage of spaces. This was usually more of an annoyance than anything, but on one occasion, it had put me in very real danger. I was still finishing my degree at the time, and I had night classes that, in combination with an hour-and-a-half commute, left me getting home on most nights well after 11 p.m.
5 deeply disturbing Reddit stories.
Today's video is sponsored by Raycon. Since you've clicked on this video, you no doubt enjoy delving into the spookier side of YouTube from time to time. Audio horror is a great way to unwind after a long day, but to maximize those spine chills, it's important to be listening through a quality pair of earbuds. That's where Raycon comes in. Raycon earbuds offer the high quality audio you expect from other top brands at about half the price of any other premium wireless earbuds on the market. That level of fidelity really helps bring whatever unsolved mystery or noise isolation out all other distractions, keep you motivated in yanking your earbud or by clicking. Disturb ourselves with a handful of sinister Reddit posts. We'll kick things off with a real heavy one. Prepare yourselves. 3 years ago, a man who went by the username Jason in Hell made a post on the r/relationship advice subreddit. The title of his post spoke for itself. I'm having a hard time coping with my wife having cheated on me with our neighbor. The post itself was a long read, but I'll give you a quick summary here. Essentially, Jason began by saying that 1 year prior to posting, he caught his 29-year-old wife having an affair with their 51-year-old neighbor. He decided to stay with her for the sake of their 2 children, but said that he hadn't been able to get over the betrayal and that it constantly occupied his mind. It's been 476 days since I confronted her about it. How do I know? Because every time I catch myself thinking about it, I tell myself, it's only been X days, maybe you won't think about it tomorrow. He went on to describe how he found out she was cheating, how he confronted her and the neighbor, and how she responded by threatening him with, "You'll never see your kids again if you break up with me." Jason had tried to end his life when he was in high school, so she was going to use that as evidence as to why he was an unfit father, and why he shouldn't have custody or rights to see his children. As such, Jason gave in to her demands and decided to stay with her. She even made the poor guy apologize to the neighbor. After making his post, Jason received various responses, some of them a little tone deaf, though ultimately, most people agreed he needed to file for divorce pronto. Staying in an unhealthy relationship was a bad idea for both him and the kids. Jason then made a follow-up post, in which he thanked everyone for their advice, and said he was indeed going ahead with the divorce like they suggested, and was meeting with an attorney the following week. Problem solved, right? Far from it. This is where things took a horrible and unforeseeable turn. Jason's wife's name was Brandy Worley. On the evening that Jason filed for divorce, she went to the kitchen, picked up a blade, and took the lives of both of their children by plunging it into their necks. She even tried to end her own life before calling the authorities and telling them what had just happened. All the while, Jason was asleep in the basement. Brandy was sentenced to 120 years in prison. Reddit was in disbelief, especially the relationship advice subreddit. Everyone who read the previous posts knew that Brandy was a horrible person, but I doubt anyone anticipated she was truly evil. Many users felt guilty for the advice they had given Jason, specifically those who had replied with a harsh tone, criticizing him. A mod-authored post was made, asking everyone to remember that behind each of the posts on the site was a real person with real problems, and to respond respectfully. In an anonymous environment, people can be quite mean, that's for sure. Jason went on to make one more post, this time titled, "Thank you." I would like to give a heartfelt and sincere thank you for the advice and support I have received here. No one could have foreseen the tragedy that resulted from my filing for divorce. You guys perform a wonderful service to those in need, and I hope you continue to do so
Many
in the
will
future.
begin to whisper.
With the support of YouTuber Philip DeFranco, who raised awareness about the incident, $56,000 was raised to help Jason with living and funeral expenses. I'm sure I speak for all of us when I say our thoughts go out to him. No one deserves to go through what he did.
Secrets are sharper than blades.
Welcome to Raid Shadow Legends. If you're wondering just what you're getting into, Raid Shadow Legends is a free-to-play game for your PC or Mac running on the Plarium Play platform.
5 years ago, Reddit user Larry Gilger made a post on a thread titled, "What was the scariest or creepiest thing that ever happened to you?" The thread itself went relatively unnoticed, only reaching 3.6k upvotes. But one of the posts in particular stuck in the minds of the people who read it at the time, and even today, it gets cited as one of the creepiest experiences shared by any user on the site. It comes from a user who has since deleted their account, and is a cautionary tale of the highest order. Years ago, I went on a cross-country trip solely to a family reunion. I was supposed to make it to a friend's house, but there was horrible weather, so it was slow moving. Then a terrible accident happened just ahead of me, and I was stuck for quite a while. All told, I was 5 hours behind schedule. I was exhausted, in need of a bathroom and a shower, so I pulled into a little motel off a fairly back-road state road. It was obviously small and dirty, but it would work in a pinch. There was a window to the outside where check-in was. The guy there eyed me up, I was then a college-age girl, and asked me.
When you think about what scares you, you probably imagine all of those fears visually. When you think about what scares you, you probably imagine all of those fears visually. After all, horror films and disturbing news is everywhere, and it's designed to frighten us. So isn't seeing something what makes us truly scared? The truth is, audio is where the real terror can be found. From our earliest moments in the womb, sound is the first connection that we make to the world. It's what contains our first introduction to fear itself and what can harm us. We even carry this into adulthood, where the creak of a floorboard in the night can be enough to keep us sleepless in our beds. But there are many worse sounds out there, and you should definitely avoid them if you want to sleep. But if you're brave enough, grab your headphones and come with me as we explore 5 recordings that you should never listen to. The Connet Project. Have you ever heard about cryptic broadcasts being made across the globe and no one really knows who they're being transmitted to? The Connet Project is a collection of those recordings, most of which are also known as number stations. Thousands of people from all over the world have recorded these broadcasts, and even more have tried to analyze them to figure out exactly what they are. They seem to originate from different locations and are connected to Russian and other governments. The eerie recordings repeat sequences of numbers over and over. In some instances, these are made by live human beings over a microphone, and in others, they are synthesized recordings. No one knows for sure what these broadcasts are used for, but they were at their height during the Cold War. It's been theorized that they were used for sending encoded instructions to spies in other countries, and some even believe that the transmissions were used to prime nuclear weapons if World War III had broken out. Others say that number stations contain encrypted information about alien visitors that are walking among us and
What if it's just the numbers of the Earth, like location, right? And it's constantly rotating and moving into that. Yeah. It's been like quite short, but this is, space is infinite, so I know it's just forever moving, forever changing, forever long. Forever. Can we just dwell? I don't want to. Fear. I'm built for it. The sea. 5 chilling encounters. I want you comfy. I like fresh coffee. 5, 10 unexplained objects that fell from the sky. 10 mysterious areas of space that 10 people who vanished in play. Holy grass? The mysterious secret rotation wars. 5. Scary urban legends that turned out to be true. Part 2.
Law enforcement agencies deal with thousands of missing person cases each and every year. Most of those people are thankfully found safe and well. However, others are not so lucky. Of those cases, those which are most perplexing involve individuals who simply vanish without a trace, even when witnesses are nearby. Here are 10 people who vanished in plain sight. Number 10 is the man in green pajamas. During 1959, one of the strangest missing person cases in history occurred. It was April of that year, and Mr. and Mrs. Campbell, a couple from Northampton, Massachusetts, were driving north on their way to visit their son in Jacksonville, Illinois. Once there, the Campbells checked into the Sandman Hotel. After the over 1,600-kilometer drive, Mr. Campbell was feeling ill and was prescribed barbiturates to help him sleep. That night, Mrs. Campbell woke in the early hours only to find her bed empty. Her husband had vanished while she slept next to him. 60 years later, the case is still perplexing. Mr. Campbell left behind his car keys, his shoes, his glasses, and his wallet. He had gone to bed that night dressed in green pajamas, and so if he had wandered off, people should have seen him. Yet, to this day, it's as though he vanished into thin air. Number 9 is the missing wife.
30 seconds of convenience spawn.
In 1975, Jackson and Martha Wright were in their car, making the journey from New Jersey to New York City. While driving through the Lincoln Tunnel, the husband and wife noticed an unusual amount of condensation on their car's windows. It was making it difficult to see where they were going. Because this was dangerous, they pulled over. Jackson got out of his car to wipe the condensation off the windshield, while Martha went to the rear of the car to clean the back window. When Jackson finished, he walked to the back of the car to see if Martha was ready to leave. But she had vanished. In just a few seconds, she had completely disappeared. Jackson called the police, who investigated and found no evidence of foul play. It still remains one of the most bizarre instances of a person disappearing with zero explanation. Number 8 is a scenic disappearance. In 2007, two friends, Barbara Bullock and Jim Ramaker, were hiking through the Bitterroot Mountains in Montana. Along the route, Jim was awestruck by the landscape in front of him, which was epic in scope and equally haunting. He turned to Barbara, who just moments before had been walking behind him, to comment on the incredible view. But his observation was never answered. Barbara was completely gone. There was no evidence of an animal attack, and Jim Ramaker was never considered a suspect by police. This was just one instance of many involving a split-second disappearance. It was as though Barbara had instantly ceased to exist, like the world had erased her from view forever. Some, however, believe that she was taken by something which science is yet to truly understand. Number 7 is the long drive. In April of 1980, Charles and Catherine Romer were a retired married couple who had set up a nice life for themselves. In the summer, they lived in their home in Scarsdale, New York. In the winter, they would enjoy the weather in Miami. That year, they were traveling back from Miami to New York when they stopped at a motel in Brunswick, Georgia. After dropping off their luggage, they went out to get some food. Driving off in their black Lincoln Continental, it would be the longest drive of their lives. They vanished in plain sight in a busy area. A highway patrolman reported that he saw a similar car on the highway nearby, but when their motel room was searched, investigators concluded that the Romers had not returned to sleep in their bed or take their luggage. No other clues were found, and so their disappearance remains a complete mystery. Number 6 is the campus student. Strange disappearances can happen in any context at any time. That's what makes them equal parts tragic and unnerving. In the case of college student Lauren Spirer, unsettling fact is tainted by unease. Lauren disappeared on June 3rd, 2001. She was out drinking at a bar in Bloomington, Indiana with friends. The 20-year-old seemed intoxicated, and after going to an apartment building and having a drunken altercation with a friend, she then walked along a nearby street heading south. That was the last anyone ever saw of Lauren. Though there's CCTV footage of her movements that night and eyewitness testimony, it appears that she walked south into oblivion. While the case remains unsolved, some have suggested that Lauren had an accident that night with friends, and in a panic, they covered up the grisly truth. However, no one knows for sure. Number 5 is the budding photographer. In the summer of 1981, a group consisting of 7 people went camping at Yosemite Sunrise High Sierra Camp. During their stay, one of the campers, Stacy Ross, told the others that she was going to walk to a nearby lake and take some photographs for her collection. While Stacy was accompanied part of the way, she made the last section of the walk on her own. She was seen in plain view by a tour guide.
No medical exams on policies under $1 million.
A friend recommended getting life insurance through Ethos. Best decision ever.
For around $1 a day, I got $300,000 in term life insurance for my family. It's 100% online and took seconds to get a quote.
No medical exam, no waiting, no hassle.
I just had to answer a few health questions and boom, family protected. Check your price.
Take care of everything.
It's a perfect day to come out and play at Sesame Place. Join Elmo, Abby, and all your favorite furry friends. Enjoy family-friendly thrills and live shows at Sesame Place. Right now, save up to 55% on admission.
Standing at the lake taking pictures when suddenly she vanished. That was the last anyone ever saw of Stacy, and her puzzling case is just one of several strange disappearances in that area. When the police searched the lake, they found Stacy's camera where she had been standing. It was as though her camera had fallen to the ground the instant something or someone malevolent had snatched her from her life. Number 4 is the silent farmhouse. Mysterious disappearances have been well documented by historians. Take, for example, the disappearance of Owen Parfit. Owen lived in his English farmhouse in the 1760s with his sister. He had long regaled those in the area with stories of great deeds, including adventure and piracy. While few believed him, one fact was clear. Owen was virtually immobile because of some accident he had earlier in life. One day, he was sitting on the porch of his farmhouse. Across the street, laborers were working in plain view. Owen's sister went inside for a moment, and then, because the weather was turning, she went back to the porch to bring Owen indoors. However, he was gone. For a man that couldn't walk, with numerous witnesses outside of his house at the time, Owen had somehow vanished in sinister fashion, his disappearance marking one last great tale. Number 3 is where fiction meets reality.
Violence is so messy.
In 1987, Tom Young went for a walk near his Silver Plume, Colorado home. He took his dog and headed out for a few hours. However, he never returned. As it turned out, Tom had been renting some retail space in town, which was then rented out to a new resident named Keith Reinhard. Keith was told about Tom's disappearance, and so he found the events so intriguing that he wrote a novel about it. The main character was a mix of Tom Young and Keith Reinhard himself. A year later, in 1988, Tom Young's remains were found. He had taken his own life. However, 1 week later, Keith Reinhard walked around town, telling those he encountered that he was going for a hike. Then, he vanished into thin air just like Tom had. No one knows, but the last words of Keith's novel spoke of a man understanding everything and heading out into the wilderness, never to be seen again. Number 2 is the antiques dealer. On Saturday, the 16th of June in 1990, Trevelyan Evans did what she always did. At 9:30 a.m., she opened her store, Attic Antiques, to customers. The store was on Church Street in a Welsh town, and Trevelyan was well known. Being in broad daylight, no one expected this quaint town to be at the center of a bizarre missing person case. Those who encountered Trevelyan that morning said that she was in a good mood as usual. At around noon, a smartly dressed man was seen in the shop talking to her. Then at 12:40 p.m., Trevelyan left a note on the door of her store which read, "Back in 2 minutes," but she never fulfilled that promise. Unconfirmed reports suggest that Trevelyan was seen walking out of town hours later, but whatever happened, she seems to have disappeared on a busy street in broad daylight with no explanation. And number 1 is The Passenger. On December 1st, 1949, a man named James E. Tedford was traveling to his home in Bennington, Vermont after visiting relatives in St. Alban. His chosen mode of transport was a bus, and so he got on a bus at St. Alban and waited until he reached his destination. According to witnesses, Tedford was still on that bus one stop away from Bennington, and yet, when the bus pulled up at Tedford's hometown, he was gone. His luggage was found in the bus luggage rack, and his empty seat had a bus timetable resting upon it. Not a single person saw James E. Tedford leave the bus, and debate still rages about what happened to him. Were the passengers and driver part of a conspiracy, or did something snatch James E. Tedford so quickly that his disappearance was at first unnoticed? Nobody can be certain. But as always, thank you so much for watching, for liking this video, and of course for subscribing to my channel. And a very special thank you to all of my channel members, especially the ones you see on your screen right now. All of you help keep my channel going. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next video.
The power of Christ compels you! The power of Christ compels you!
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 20 horror movies inspired by true events.
I like to refer to this as a fixer-upper that can be fun.
I'm only trying to say that Amity is a summer town. We need summer dollars.
For this list, we'll be looking at horror flicks that drew on real-life events or people. What horror movie based on true events was too scary for you to finish? Let us know in the comments. Number 20, The Girl Next Door.
Thanks, David. That was fun. Hey, back where? We're staying with our cousins, the Chandlers.
Based on John Ketchum's 1989 novel, this horror drama...
This summer, escape to Great Wolf Lodge, your drive-to destination for family fun. Sure, there are water slides, games, and plenty of adventure, but we're here so you can connect and grow closer than ever before. Let our Paw Pledge keep you safe while you play. Book your family getaway.
I like to leave a lasting impression. am I?
Today's video is sponsored by Raycon. Co-founded by Ray J, Raycon have been shaking up the electronics industry recently by designing wireless earbuds that start at about half the price of any other premium products on the market and sound just as amazing as any other top audio brands you know. They've become the about it when I got older.
I'll be back soon.
My dad was out at a supermarket picking out some groceries. But right now, Nord has a special cyber deal on. Head over to nordvpn.com/masquerade or use coupon code MASQUERADE and you'll make a huge 68% saving on their 2-year plan. They'll even throw in an extra month for free and give you a surprise gift. Find that URL in the description or comment section below and take advantage of that devilish deal.
Like what you see?
Turret plating will soon fall.
On September 16th, 2009, Mitrice Richardson, a 24-year-old psychology major, was taken into custody after failing to pay her bill at a Malibu restaurant. She was taken to the Lost Hills Sheriff's Department.
Your enemies close.
The officers who arrested her quickly realized that she was displaying signs of psychosis and that something wasn't quite right with her. They contacted her family, and Mitrice's mother informed them that her daughter was bipolar and was experiencing a manic episode. She begged them not to let Mitrice go while she was in that state. The officers promised her mother that they'd release Mitrice at 5 AM the following morning after she'd calmed down. For some bizarre reason, they didn't do that. Instead, they let her leave at 12:28 AM without giving her back her cell phone, ID, money, or her car, which was at a towing station 11 miles away, meaning she was stranded and alone in an unfamiliar place, in the dead of night, while in a dangerous state of mind. Pretty much a recipe for disaster, right? Well, that proved to be the case. Mitrice was sighted 6 hours later in the Santa Monica Mountains, about a 2-hour uphill hike from the sheriff's department, resting in a local resident's backyard. Later, screams were reported, coming from a vacant house nearby. It's not clear whether these screams were investigated. Unsurprisingly, Mitrice disappeared that night without a trace and was never seen again. Not alive, at least. 11 months would pass by without any news of Mitrice's well-being. Needless to say, her family were worried sick. It was a hot August day in 2010 when Mitrice was finally found in the wilderness of Dark Canyon. A local ranger had spotted her submerged in a creek. Her half-mummified, half-skeletal remains were protruding slightly from the water's surface.
My attention's
Her head was missing, and her clothing had been removed. Her skull was later found nearby and had been placed upside down. The ranger contacted the LASD immediately. The first officer who arrived on the scene was either incompetent or ill-intentioned. He spent 90 minutes there alone before he contacted the coroner's office. 2 helicopters were dispatched to the scene, one carrying more police officers and the other carrying the coroner's team to examine the area. The chopper carrying the officers arrived there quickly enough, but for some unknown reason, the coroner's helicopter was continuously delayed. The team waited and waited to no avail. Their transport never arrived, leaving the police officers alone at the scene for more than 6 hours. The authorities explained this away by saying that there were no other helicopters available at the time, but that later turned out not to be true at all. Suspicious. Also suspicious was this. Despite the coroners instructing the officers not to tamper with the body at all, the cops ignored their instruction, sloppily gathered up Mitrice, and airlifted her back to the station, leaving behind several of her bones in the process. Sheriff Lee Backer quickly declared Mitrice's death to have been an accident. Well, that didn't sit right with anyone. How did they account for the state of her remains? The poor girl had clearly been decapitated. Actually, said the police, her head had been attached to her when her remains were found. The first responding officer had simply dragged her body out of the water by the skull, and in doing so, had accidentally detached her head from her torso. Well, people might have been able to believe that, had the ranger who discovered Mitrice's body not taken a picture of the scene before any officers arrived. The photo clearly showed Mitrice's body in the water, already headless. The cops had just been caught in an obvious lie, just like how they'd lied about not having a spare chopper to airlift the coroners to the scene. So, the cops had already been caught lying, and we know that. Next question. Why were all of Mitrice's clothes missing? The sheriff's department said that animals had likely scavenged them. As experts pointed out, that means the animals would have had to unbuckle her belt, untie her shoelaces, remove her socks and 2 t-shirts. A few of those items, sure, but everything? All without damaging her body? It just didn't add up. No, they had also said that she perished in an accident, and not at the hands of another human being, right? What kind of accident? Well, said the police, she clearly wandered off up the mountains and been bitten by a rattlesnake. Okay, that explanation was possible, but far from probable, since California only had...
I love fear. Fear is fuel. I kind of joke, but not really, that I put fear in my bowl of cereal in the morning.
Extremely.
5 hidden secrets from ancient caves. Aside from being tourist hotspots, ancient caverns have always been perfect sources of mystery and speculations. Dark, cold, and isolated, these underground structures hold some of the oldest secrets of our world. Here are 5 hidden secrets from ancient caves. Number 5, Pancheon Cave. There's a lot to tell just by looking at bones. It's easy for scientists who are analyzing human bones to pinpoint where the possessor of the bones spent his or her life. They can even determine the person's diet, the type of job they held, or if they had incurred any injuries. The same can be done with animal bones. However, there are some exemptions that appear to boggle everyone's minds. In China, in the Guzhan Plateau, there is a cave that is 1,600 feet above sea level. This means that it's practically on top of a mountain. Found inside were bones of prehistoric creatures like lumbering rhinos, stegodons, and giant buffalo. Most of these aforementioned animals were grazers. Some of them were carnivorous, but they usually went after those of smaller size than themselves. One of the pressing questions that emerged right off the bat is, how are these huge beasts able to make their way up to this mountain cave? Paleontologists, people who study the history of life here on Earth, first proposed that these insanely huge and heavy animals were dragged into the cave to be eaten by even larger animals. It didn't take long before their theory got debunked, however. Layers upon layers of soil deposits were examined, and they still couldn't find evidence of such huge predators. Much to their bewilderment, what they found instead was evidence of human activity, and they even found human teeth. Probing further, they discovered blade marks and chemical staining on some of the bones. It also appeared that several of them bore marks of being slaughtered. Others were cut, pounded by stone, and burned, suggesting that they were prepared and consumed. Aside from the bones of these giant animals, they also found bones of what seemed to be a giant ape. This beast was over 10 feet tall. However, it was an herbivore. Thus, it was unlikely to be the single entity responsible for such slaughter. The fact that there were no other bigger animals that they could find in the cavern complex adds more to the mystery behind the presence of human activity. Experts have now come to this notion. Could it be possible that there once lived a race of giant humans capable of hunting and gathering these animals? If yes, could it also be likely that these colossal ancestors of ours were actually domesticating them, considering that they also found piles of baby animal bones? As of now, our experts still have to identify these huge predators that brought these grazing animals high up to the mountains. Until then, the possibilities are endless, and they're admittedly scary to consider. Number 4, Royston Cave. Around 40 miles north of London, in the district of North Hertfordshire, England, is a little town called Royston. One of the most infamous landmarks there is a cave named after the place.
Handle things personally.
Found beneath Melbourne Street, Royston Cave is actually an artificial cavern first discovered in 1742. One day, a construction worker who happened to be working in the area found a millstone under the ground. Curious, he lifted the heavy object, and he saw an entrance into a narrow shaft which led into an unknown interior. Considering how tiny the space was, the crowd decided to appoint a small boy to enter the hole. With rope wound around his body, the boy was lowered down slowly into what later appeared to be a complex network of underground tunnels. Soon more and more people were able to go down into the cave. They found the entire space filled with dirt and rock. When it was cleared, they uncovered a huge expanse of strange carvings sprawled on the walls of the lower part of the chamber. The etchings appeared so emotionally charged and symbolically rich. Try as they might, symbologists couldn't figure out the meanings behind them. Even more so, they didn't have the slightest idea of their origin and purpose. Aside from the unrecognizable ones, some Christian figures were found, including pictures of the Holy Family, St. John the Baptist, St. Lawrence, St. Christopher, and St. Thomas of Becket, to mention a few. There are also some paganistic ones, like the Sheila Nagig, figurative carvings of a naked woman displaying an exaggerated vulva. The presence of Royston Cave remains a big mystery. No one knows when it was constructed and who worked on it. Recently, there have been some theories suggesting that it could be the Knights Templar.
Like what you see?
Some say that the cave was built by Freemasons to serve as their headquarters. There have also been rumors saying that some notable local personalities built and used the place as a private venue for gatherings. Today, Royston Cave is registered as a historic England heritage site and is open to tourists. Number 3, Carpathian Mountain Cave. When we talk of Transylvania, Romania, what automatically comes into mind is Dracula, the original vampire. But more than this infamous figure, the medieval castles, cities, and ruins, this country also boasts other terrifying legends. In the 1960s, footprints were discovered in a cave located in the western Carpathian Mountains of Transylvania. In the Sieur-Izbuk cave in the Carpathian Mountains, explorers found 400 sets of said human footprints, and according to the data collected from radiocarbon measurements, they were first assumed to be 10,000 to 15,000 years old. They were believed to be made by at least 6 or 7 people, including at least one child. They had probably entered the cave for shelter after a flood. The time frame given seemed to coincide around the time Homo sapiens thrived in the region. However, new carbon dating analysis conducted on the footprints brought forth some unnerving conclusions. It appears that the prints could have been around as early as 36,500 years ago. This now begs the question, who were these mysterious people that inhabited the cave, and what happened to them? There are scientists saying that Homo sapiens have probably been around for more than 100,000 years. This theory is based on tracks found in Tanzania, which were believed to be 120,000 years old. Should this be confirmed, it would mean that they are the world's oldest human footprints. However, since they were first found in 2011, this theory is yet to be proven. Because of this, the mysterious human-like footprints in the Carpathian Mountain Cave remain to be the oldest to ever be seen in Northern Europe. Five very strange things about Antarctica. It was Captain James Cook who was credited for discovering Antarctica when he crossed the Antarctic Ocean in 1773. Since then, various explorers have become fascinated by the large ice-covered landmass. Over the years, it has become a place of fascination and mystery. And these are 5 very strange things about Antarctica. Number 5. Ancient civilizations live there.
Not so easy to get
In the present day, Antarctica is still considered a vast desert, home to strange animals and very few humans who are at best temporary residents. But despite being desolate, recent discoveries by NASA are pointing to the possibility Antarctica may have once been inhabited by ancient civilizations. As more of the ice sheets melt, experts believe it's slowly revealing many of the once buried secrets Antarctica holds. For example, NASA satellite images captured an unusual area, some 1.5 miles beneath the surface, showcasing what could be a possible human settlement. The images showed strange markings that looked man-made, as if structures once stood there. In the image, you can make out squares and canals of some sort.
Spineless?
If you want to spend a long time in this place, you may need to consider taking health precautions, such as having your wisdom teeth removed or getting an appendectomy in advance. There are absolutely no reptiles or amphibians here, and all land mammals are brought exclusively by humans. There's been no rain here for almost 2 million years, but at the same time, 80% of the world's freshwater reserves are stored here. Antarctica, the coldest and probably the most mysterious continent on the planet. Over the past century, humanity has studied its surface quite well, but we all know that what's most interesting is usually hidden deep beneath. When scientists decided to look under the ice cover of Antarctica, what they saw there surprised not only ordinary people like me, but also the researchers themselves. So what is hidden deep beneath these huge sheets of ice? For a long time, scientists have believed that under the immense thickness of ice, there's nothing particularly interesting. At most, maybe some small, scattered pockets of subglacial groundwater. However, the expectations that researchers had in the 90s have been exceeded. As it turns out, under the ice of Antarctica, there's a whole lake, and it's also quite large, about 5,800 square miles, or 15,000 square kilometers, which is about 1.5 times the size of the island of Cyprus. The depth of the reservoir.
Aced. Your team has destroyed a turret.
Secrets are sharp.
Your team has destroyed an inhibitor. Your team has destroyed a turret. The enemy's inhibitor has respawned. Your team has destroyed a turret. Victory!
Do a puzzle without me. I didn't want to do a puzzle. No, not me. Hey, Tavon, what you want to do today? Not a puzzle. It's okay. Friends, I ain't got that. What's up, girl?